Now that the calendar has changed to October, there are tens of millions of Americans waiting to hear when they will be able to apply to get up to $20,000 of student loans wiped clean. The Biden administration has consistently said that applications for this new program should launch in early October. As a reminder, as long as you earn less than $125,000 a year, you could be eligible for up to $20,000 in federal student loans forgiven if you received a Pell Grant, or up to $10,000 forgiven if you did not. While we don't yet have a specific date for the launch, the White House press secretary recently said this.
The application will be a short online form. Borrowers won't need to upload any documents or use their FSAID to support their application. The application will be available from October 2022 through December 2023. Again, I know you're asking for a specific date, but that was what we provided in the email, and we should have more soon to share.
Well, we know there are a lot of questions out there about all of this as we get closer to the start date. So we want to bring in Robby Dunn, Vice President of Counseling at Consumer Credit Counseling of Buffalo. Thanks so much for taking some time for us. We appreciate it. You know, for somebody who's out there watching this very closely, you hear early October, this should begin. We're in early October. I know it's not live yet, but how are people preparing?
Yeah, we've been anticipating for a while. So I think people are definitely getting anxious for what the steps they need to take. So, you know, really, we're just telling people to stand by, to make sure that they're contacting their servicer, to make sure that they have up-to-date information on how they can contact them so that they can get updates on when to apply, as well as when they're in the application pending process. So also, folks can subscribe to get updates from the U.S. Department of Education website so that they can be the first to know when the website goes live for the application.
We wanted to do this today because, again, we've been mentioning early October, and we know that people want every bit of information about this, and that is whether or not you yourself may get some student loans forgiven, or maybe you're the parent of someone or the grandparent of someone. So a lot of people are paying close attention, and I know even though the applications haven't even started, there's already been this change in eligibility for the program last week that caught a lot of folks off guard. Can you kind of walk us through how that played out?
Yeah, that's correct. So on late notice, a little bit of a curveball. So some student loans that are being held by borrowers are what's called federal family education loans, or FFEL loans. So it's a bit confusing, but essentially they're privately held student loans that are backed and subsidized by the federal government. So they announced the portion of these FFEL loans that are privately held would not qualify for the $10,000 or $20,000 of student loan forgiveness. Now, they have stated that perhaps down the road, these could be forgiven, but I believe that there is some worries of lawsuits that could incur since they are federally held loans. And so I think to expedite the process, the Department of Ed and the White House has decided to not allow those to be forgiven for now, but there is still some optimism that potentially down the road that could occur.
And again, we think that is a pretty kind of a smaller percentage of the total, federal student loans that we've been talking about. You mentioned lawsuits there. There have already been a number of those filed against this program to try to stop it before it begins. A lot of people watching right now. I mean, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this, right? There are some people who say that this is not a good way of spending essentially taxpayer money. Aside from the politics of it, what are you hearing from people as you kind of help guide them through this process, who are wondering, like, at the last minute, is this not even going to happen at all?
I think there could be some concerns of that. I would say, for the most part, people are optimistic. They've heard the initial announcement, a lot of information about it. We would advise people not to 100%, for sure count on it, not to go make any significant financial decisions that might be dependent upon this loan forgiveness. And to make sure that as soon as the application opens, that you take advantage, apply for it as soon as possible. They have shared information. It could take maybe 6 weeks for you to receive the forgiven funds, or for your balances to go down by $10,000 or $20,000. So I would say act quickly in case there is lawsuits down the road. Perhaps you can be well into the process or have already received your forgiveness when some of these lawsuit concerns even arise to reality.
Finally, Robby, we know there have also been questions about the loan payments that people made during the pandemic, some of which can apparently be refunded. What are you telling people asking about that?
Yeah, that is the case. So since March 13th, any of 2020, once the pandemic began, anybody that made payments during the payment pause could request refunds of their payments. So this could be something to strategically look into. If you made, let's say, $3,000 or $4,000 of payments during the pandemic to pay off your student loans because you wanted to take advantage of this period of time where there was no interest accruing and you saw an end in sight with your student loans, well, you potentially could get those payments refunded back to you, and then you could get that amount forgiven through the loan forgiveness, through the student loan debt relief program, if it is less than $10,000. So it really depends on how much your balances are, how much payments you made during the pandemic, but certainly something to explore, particularly for those that owe lower balances, less than $10,000.
A lot of moving parts to this, and I know that you and your colleagues there are helping people navigate it. Robby Dunn is Vice President of Counseling at Consumer Credit Counseling of Buffalo. Thanks so much for helping us understand this better tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.